Are you familiar with FBI Special Agents Kyle Seraphin?
I'm familiar with the name.
Is that yes?
I'm familiar with the name. Familiar with the name.
Let's bring in Kyle Seraphin. He's the FBI whistleblower who helped expose government censorship of our First Amendment rights.
Now, we only have this memo because a recently suspended FBI agent called Kyle Seraphin brought it to the public. And we're grateful that he did. Kyle, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
He's the host of something that strangely is called the Kyle Seraphin Show.
Kyle Seraphin, I can't thank you enough for speaking out. I knew you guys were out there, and I knew it was just a matter of time, but you got a lot of guts putting your face and your name to this. You're doing a service on behalf of the American people, and from the bottom of my cracked and broken heart sometimes, thank you very much.
Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Today is Thursday. It is June the 20th. We have survived the Juneteenth massacres. Yeah, we're going to talk about those a little bit because they are real. We're going to talk a little bit about the value of human life or the lack thereof in certain cultures. It's going to be a big piece of today. We are rolling live right now on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Are you guys joining us here on Rumble? Where are you watching us? I know there's like 20 or 30 of you that like this on YouTube. Make the switch. You'll be happy you did. You'll be able to participate in the community here, and you'll be able to weigh in. I don't even know what this chat talks about, by the way. Folks, I see you in the chat. I know you guys are talking about all kinds of things that have nothing to do with what we're doing on the show here. That's why most of you go back and listen on the audio show. And if you're listening on the audio show, we very much appreciate it. Thanks for listening to us on Apple, on Spotify, on iHeartRadio. Thank you for sharing. If you didn't listen to us yesterday, and I know it was a federal holiday, so some of you were off, I'm going to really encourage you to go back and listen. I don't like doing the same show over and over again. That is a thing that some people like to do. They just want to talk about the same topics, being the same drubs. I get bored. That's why we do it the way we do it here. This is a show that I enjoy doing, and I hope you enjoy the fact that we are going to just cover everything we can. And we're going to keep pushing forward. So if you missed yesterday's, what we talked about, I think is of significant substance. I think that the timeline of the fall of America is something that you should at least have in your brain for quick access. And if you don't know the dates of 1913 for the 16th and 17th Amendment, if you don't know what happened in the 1930s when the governments became gangsters and the gangsters got a chance to do the only things that only government could do because of the firearms restrictions, if you don't know the racist nature of firearms restrictions in this country, if you don't understand what the Chevron deference is and why the Administrative Procedures Act from 1946 makes a big difference and how it got boosted on steroids in a way it wasn't supposed to in 1984, if you don't know those off the top of your head, that's my pitch for you to go listen to yesterday's episode and share it about. This problem is bigger. And the reason I tell you that is because the problem is bigger than one election is going to solve. This is not going to get solved by one guy, Donald Trump, but it is about to be presidential debate season, which can be very, very fun. It can be very interesting. It can be amusing. And it'll also be massively frustrating for those of us who have to watch this for a living because we are going to see tremendous gaslighting and stupidity. We have already seen the media apparatus spin up the chaos of trying to cover for a man that is basically indefensible in Joe Biden. There is no way that any sane person can watch him and go, yeah, this guy's 100%. This guy's got it. He's so reasonable. And we're going to cover some of the stories here. They're actually already starting to spin, they being the mainstream media, how all presidents do a crappy job in their first presidential debate. Listen, this is what they call pre-bunking. We've heard this from the mis and the dis and the malinformation folks. We've heard them talking about how this is the way that they're going to handle problematic information. They want to pre-bunk, which is to say they want to seed information that you're going to believe. We've talked about it multiple times on this program, but the illusory truth effect, they're going to start saying false things that you're going to believe so that when the real information pops up, it's much harder to dislodge that. And the only way that we can continue to dislodge garbage information, replace it with true information, is by being open-minded and being skeptics. And that's what we're all about here on this program. I hope that you have your Patriot cooler filled up. If you're listening to us in the afternoon, I hope you have a tumbler full of water or some sort of beverage that is going to hydrate you. And if you are listening to us or watching us right now live on Rumble, you better have some coffee because we're going to start testing your brain. We're going to be making some connections today that you're going to enjoy. You can get your own tumbler just like mine. This is the white 16 ounce. It's too big for sitting in your car's cup holder, but it's great for your desk. And in my case, I've got the Suspendables flags on here and a little bit of a coffee stain to boot. They got a great lid. They've got a great product. It keeps your coffee and or tea and or whatever the heck you drink that's warm in the morning. You can get one at patriotcoolers.com, promo code KYLE. Don't forget our promo code KYLE. It'll save you 10%. It basically makes the customization free. If you get two of them, $50 or more, you're going to get free shipping. So that's pretty easy. And if you want a durable product that's going to last for season to season to season, for some reason I was on Instagram and they were throwing me these coolers called Arctic. And I went, Arctic? That's inferior looking. It doesn't even look as good as the stuff they sell over at Patriot Coolers. So if you happen to be in the market, or if you're looking for a gift for a dad or a man that's in the outdoor world, or a woman who goes out there and likes camping or RVing, check out patriotcoolers.com. That promo code KYLE is what you're going to use. Let's do it, folks. I got a public service announcement for you. Public service. We showed you yesterday FBI agents banging on the door, tubby guys with bellies that were at the edge of retirement, the ordinary men of the FBI that are more than willing to go out and do the bidding of this weaponized government. Do we think that they are true believers? We do not. That's why I'm shaking my head. If you can't see it, I'm shaking my head. They are not true believers. They believe in something that someone tweeted back at me, I guess yesterday, maybe this morning. They're like, look, I've got a family member in the FBI and they're a decent person and they're just hanging in there for the pension. That's the problem. You can't hang in there for the pension if they ask you to do something evil. You got to step up. It's the time. And they said, well, the whistleblowers have all been fired. You're correct. We have. That's what happens. Even whistleblowers you don't even know, folks. I've got friends in our little community whose names are not public who lost their jobs to bring you information after very, very distinguished and long careers and decent, solidly human, decent human beings. Really problematic. Man, it's not good. So here's the public service announcement for today. This comes from the 1992 classic Glengarry Glen Ross. Anybody who was involved in sales, this was required watching before they did movies like Boiler Room and other stuff with, what's Matt Damon's buddy? Ben Affleck. Before they did those kind of sales movies. This was the original OG 1980s New York real estate sales movie with Alec Baldwin making about a 6 minutes appearance, but he gets title role because he's so good. And this is your reminder on what you're supposed to do when the FBI comes knocking at your door.
A, B, C. A, always, B, C, closing. Always be closing. Always be closing.
Always be closing the D, door, the door, okay? A, B, C, D. Those are your easy acronyms to remember. Alec Baldwin told you that if you're a salesman, you better always be closing. And if you are a person where the FBI knocks on your door, A, B, C, D, always be closing the door. Human nature is to talk. You don't have to be nice. Nobody said you do. The FBI is supposed to work for you. A, B, C, D, folks. Just remember it, share it. This needs to be a viral concept on all the social medias. It has to be, because they haven't earned the right to talk to you at this point. They're involved in something that is so far outside of the range of what that agency was set up to do. And we're going to talk some of that today. Let's get into our first little story here, but that was an important public service announcement and brought to you by the Kyle Seraphin Show, okay? Number one, Juneteenth is more than a holiday. I didn't know this. I love going to the wild lefty sites. This is from MSNBC. I found out today, I was today years old, that Juneteenth is more than a holiday. It's actually a call to action, and it needs to inspire reparations. Who knew? This is an opinion piece. You guys know what I said about opinion pieces. This is when you get to get somebody from outside your organization. You get to claim that they are actually not representing the opinions of your organization so that you can get the opinions of your organization out into the world. Now, this person who is writing is someone called Dr. Randy Lancaster Short. He is a minister, allegedly, an author, but also, most importantly, a reparations advocate. And this story tells us that Juneteenth is not just a black holiday. Well, now it's a federal holiday, so I guess that's true. But it's not just a black thing. It's actually about all Americans and a renewed interest in the undiscussed issues of slavery, race, and the most incendiary issue, reparations for the descendants of American slaves. All right. I read this article. You won't be surprised to find out that I am unconvinced by the arguments because they're utterly stupid. There are discussions about the Tulsa race riots in the 1920s, of which nobody is alive that survived those. Nobody. But there are attorneys representing the families of those who survived the race riot. Look, America has a history of doing some awful things, like every group of people on earth. But the concept of paying people who never did any, paying people who never received bad treatment by people who never did any bad actions. It's absurd. It's absurd on its face. There is no way to go far enough back in the timeline to fix this. This is that whole retarded, and there is no other way to say it, but retarded concept that you hear these lefties. They just say things like reparations, land back, no plan, no idea how this would affect anything. It's absurd. It's foolishness. But this is where the Democrat Party and where the MSNBC, which is that sort of emotional center of the hard left, lives. They're saying things that would utterly destroy American meritocracy. It takes the responsibility for your own life away from grown adults who have agency. It's insane that it keeps going. But the problem is that it actually results in a little bit of movement towards dumb federal employees and people that vote for a living. There was this long time kind of discussion about two types of people in America. I think this is far too generalized. But the concept that some people work for a living and other people vote for a living, it's bad. We can't be playing that game. We can't live in a world where people can vote for a living. And I'm actually a proponent of people that, based on your taxes last year, this is the one that I always thought made sense. I don't think everybody should be able to vote, folks. Call me an elitist in this way. But if you don't have a positive payout to the government, if you're not actually actively putting your money into the government, why are you able to say what we're going to do with our monies? And this would definitely include people that just got to this country. This should immediately solve the problem of the illegals coming in. I think that the vote is far too broadly given. And I think that's fairly obvious because all the declines that we've had in this country have happened, yes, since 1913, since we went more towards a democracy, which is what the left continues to talk about. The more we get democratic, the less we are living under a constitutional republic, which was supposed to protect us from that thing. There was a reason why people who owned land were the only ones who had any say in the original sort of imagination of how the American experiment was supposed to work. You had to own land. It was propertied white males, sure. But it was people that had a stake in what was going on. And they were also, this is the real key, responsible for those who worked for them. They knew that. If they didn't take care of those underneath them that were working for them, this is the concept of noblesse oblige that the Europeans talk about, the obligation of the nobles. There is a real thing there that if you have certain things, that's why philanthropy is a real thing in America. The problem is when you start making people hit the bare minimums, which is to say their tax burden, they will always fight to not do that. Instead, you make it aspirational. I don't want to tip my hand too far, but if you guys are not following my friends over at Catholic Vote, we have an episode today that is on Between the Lines. That's our weekly podcast we do, and it's available on whatever channel you're watching us on. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can find it on Catholic Vote's YouTube, and if you're listening on Rumble, it's on Catholic Vote's Rumble. The idea is that there are two ways that you can set standards. One is minimum standards. Minimum standards make people sink to the minimum, as you'd expect. But there is another way. And that way is setting the highest standard, which is to say, perform at your maximum, and then we'll decide if it was good enough. And what you'll find is that's an age-old technique to get people to do their best. We see it in special operations in the military. They don't tell you what the time limit is for a heavy ruck or a land navigation course. They don't tell you how fast you have to go and how quickly you have to hit your points. They just say, do your best, and we'll tell you if it was good enough at the end. They know the number. One of the things that I was most proud of doing in my life was getting through combat dive school, which is actually really, really difficult. If you guys want to watch some of that, you can go to the Discover Channel. I used to do a series called Surviving the Cut. The Surviving the Cut on Air Force Combat Dive was done the class before mine, and the guys that failed out of that class were in mine, and almost everybody on that program from that particular episode are my friends. Or they were. I knew them. We worked together. The thing that they do is an unknown amount of time underwater fighting an enormous human being who is coming down and getting unlimited breath, and you are fighting on a single breath ripped out of a regulator from your mouth. And they do that over and over again for a classified amount of time. Why? Because you can't know how long you have to survive. You got to survive until it's over. That's aspirational. It's the opposite of the minimum standard. And I think there's something very important there. These ideas for that reparation, it's the worst and the lowest common denominator they're appealing to. People who think that they deserve something simply by nature of their birth. That's un-American, and it shouldn't exist. But it does lead us to these Juneteenth type celebrations, which are always popping up in the news for the last couple of years. They are sad. They are tragic. They are mostly people gathering in a park doing something that's not a big deal, and there are people who are spoiling it. But the problem with what we got going on, the gaslighting that goes on in our government, and specifically in our media piece of it right now, is they will not claim exactly who does this. Why is it urban black people who are getting out and shooting each other over a supposed celebration over liberation of slavery, which happened to generations and generations past? It's bizarre. It's absolutely bizarre. I read this AP article, which I'm going to show you guys on the screen right now. I almost copied the entirety of their article. The AP actually claims to be something. They said, even when the news is free, journalism does not support independent, fact-based journalism. They're the democracy dies in darkness. Theirs is independent, fact-based journalism. Well, there are facts in this story, but they're so comically stupid that they can't actually get you the information without doing propaganda at the same time. So here's the story. Several people shot at Oakland Juneteenth celebration, police say. Now, those of you who've ever been to Oakland know a little bit about what's going on in Oakland. You know about the demographics of Oakland, and so this is not going to be surprising to you. Not once does it mention descriptions of the people who were involved in the shooting, the victims, or the shooters. Why is that? We all know who it is. And someone just said gangsters are going to be gangsters. I have to actually apologize for yesterday's thumbnail because I got a word misspelled. I misspelled the word gangsters. I left out one of the G's, which is kind of funny. And thank you for those in the chat who pointed it out. I fixed it in the titles, but yeah, you guys saw this. Look at this. All right, these are the critical parts of the story. These are amazing little bits. And this is what's going to get reported all the way across all your FM stations that play music. And if people are just catching a little touch of the news, they're not like you, and they don't follow it, they're going to get this nonsense. The Lake Merritt event on Wednesday was largely peaceful. All right. With as many as 5,000 people in attendance, I suppose by percentages, they probably are correct. And then this is my favorite. Until a sideshow. They didn't even put sideshow in air quotes. Like they claim like this was somehow part of the thing. Involving motorbikes and vehicles. Nothing good can come from that expression, motorbikes and vehicles. If you've ever lived on the East Coast, you've seen what motorbikes and vehicles looks like. It's like a bunch of people driving around on UTVs and ATVs and illegal motorcycles with no tags on them, driving on city streets, doing crazy stuff, not obeying laws, sometimes in the parks. They're driving around and tearing up the grass in front of the Washington Monument. You know, there's recent footage of that happening. It took place at 8:15 on the north side of the lake, the police said in a news release. All right, here's my favorite expression. Are you ready? During that fight, this is the fight that took place and broke out at the motorbikes and vehicles sideshow. During that fight, multiple shots rang out, said Paul Chambers, who's the Oakland Police Department Strategic Communications Manager. The shooting happened at 8:45. Just no information of value. Shots apparently just rang out. Disembodied firearms were involved in this particular conflict. It wasn't immediately clear how many people were injured, they said. Although several people were struck by gunfire and taken to a hospital, there are no reports of deaths. Here's my other favorite. There was already a large police presence, included as many as 24 police vehicles and multiple ambulances were at the scene. The police said 28 officers and 4 sergeants were present at the scene to monitor the event before the shooting happened. These people started shooting each other while the cops were there. The participants in the celebration were seen getting verbal with the cops. And this is why. There were some people criticizing the police response, saying they didn't respond quickly enough when people were injured. Let me get this straight for you folks. In Oakland, if you're a cop doing your job and monitoring a 5,000 mostly peaceful celebration of Juneteenth, and shots magically ring out with nobody firing them, apparently, and you don't respond to the victims fast enough as a police officer whose job it is probably to stop the act of shooting, the community is pissed at you. Not at the idiots that got out there and shot guns, not at the people that started the sideshow with motorbikes and vehicles. They're mad at the cops, and the AP reported it. This doesn't even have to be accurate for what happened there. This is the news that goes out to people like me who live in Texas and don't really care what happens in Oakland. It goes out to the news feeds. It's the stories that are ripped off. They call it a wire service. This is what your local radio stations and your newspapers are going to run with as the facts of the story because it's the AP. They are independent and they are fact-based. And as I said, all of those things may be accurate, but none of those things are telling the story of what happened there. I got a video of this Juneteenth shots ring out, this magical disembodied shots. This is what it looks like in real life, because that story sounds pretty tame. 5,000 people, there was some kind of a sideshow, some people got shot, no big deal. Everybody is mad at the cops. How about this chaos? Listen to this, even on the audio, this sounds nuts. I did this without looking at it first, just to hear what my audio listeners are going to hear. It sounds crazy. We'll cut away from it in a minute too here. Ready?
No, they shooting at each other. This nigga shot me. Where's my brother? Oh, hell no. Shot him and breathe. He shot right here. Somebody shot. He down. Somebody shot. Somebody hit him and breathe, bitch. Let's go. Where my
All right, and then you got police responding. They're in a Bearcat. Did you hear those shots? Because I did. How many of you guys are shooters? You heard a couple of semi-automatics and a couple of people firing on burst. Those were machine guns, according to the definition. I guarantee you. Were those bump stocks? Unlikely. They're probably what they call switches, which are actually little auto-sear type devices that fit on the back of a Glock. Because they're ubiquitous now and you can buy them from Mexico for nothing. They market them for airsoft and they can actually go out there and shoot these. There's also a thing where somebody can actually go and weld a single part so that whenever you pull the trigger on a semi-automatic pistol, it'll just empty the magazine. And if you've ever been around gangsters and idiots that involve themselves in this kind of behavior, what you find is that they'll have magazines that hold 10, but there'll only be 6 in there. So that may be the entire magazine that you're hearing being dumped out. And they're almost always what we call mixed brass. So different kinds of bullets from different boxes. They don't have consistency. These people are not going out and doing what I do before I ever carry a weapon, which is test reliability and go out and shoot to the point where I know what the accuracy level is, either of my sights or of my optic. And I only carry optics now. You think these people care about what they're shooting? You can't control that if you're a moron who doesn't shoot regularly at a range. And these people are morons. But that's your fault. And that apparently was a shots ringing out. That stuff's scary as hell. And how is it that is what's being focused on right now? I'm going to kind of tell you this attack, because they blame the police officers, as I just said. They blame the cops. And in the same way, because of the insanity of our society, we're blaming cops and we're blaming military, and that doesn't mean some of these people are not to blame based on adopting this kind of crazy ideology, but they are also resulting in a worse and worse problem. It is a spiral that is not going to be corrected. It's not going to be corrected because men like me and men and women like you who serve this country in law enforcement and in military, or your family members did, you are not recommending this to your children. You don't want them to go in and be part of this, do you? Why would you? Why would they step into this where they did the right thing? The cops are responding and it was their fault that some idiots brought guns and decided to shoot at a celebration that should have just been a fun time in the park. Maybe that's because our focus is on this kind of nonsense. I don't know how else you deal with this. Sometimes I see news articles that nobody else is covering and I just go like, wait, what? And this was one of those, like, I literally gasped when I read this. Can a marriage survive gender transition? Yes, and even thrive. How these couples made it work. I'm not going to make you suffer through all of this article, but it comes from ABC, which is somewhat mainstream. And even when you read it, your brain is doing this thing where you're trying to translate the reality. In the same way we just read that story, and I am basically going like, okay, who are the people involved? Okay, it was obviously going to be, it was Oakland, so it's a bunch of black people that are at some sort of celebration. Why do I know that? Because I've been to Oakland, and I just know who's there. Then you watch the video, and of course, that's true. This story is so bizarre that when I read it, all I'm trying to do is figure out what is the biological sex of the person being described and what role did they transition into? And it is not obvious as you read through it. It's so strange. It starts off, Marissa Lassoff Santos, and the person she would marry quickly fell in love head over heels. Lassoff Santos was a gay woman. Her girlfriend was a bisexual woman, or so they thought, but now her partner, this bisexual woman, has become her husband, and they both identify as queer, and things are better than ever. That is is the dumbest paragraph possibly written in the last 10 years in any media source. It's absurd. It's craziness. It is subjective reality, which I guess is why people are able to tolerate getting this false nonsense from the wire services like the AP. And they don't care about facts, because the hard news services like ABC, which used to give real news to people and tell you what was happening around the world, even if it was slanted, this isn't even slanted. This is fantasy world that makes no sense. I don't know what any of this stuff means. The woman, shockingly, is a 33-year-old librarian from Michigan. I've become more attracted to him. By the way, when you look at them, they are hideous people. You can see them on the screen. It is a fat, weird, dumpy dude who looks like a steroidal female weightlifter with a big belly, but these like weird arms. And then the woman is also a fat, ugly person. Like, these are just gross people. It used to be that gross people would just shut up and live their gross lives in gross ways, doing weird, gross sexual things in private. Now they're giving interviews to ABC News. Like, what? Some of the stuff is far too funny, and I couldn't handle not bringing this up. There's a person called Christy Overstreet who is described as a sexologist and psychotherapist who's worked with trans people for 18 years. Now that made me start thinking, 18 years. I'm fairly confident there were not really trans people 18 years ago, at least not in the way that we are talking about them today, because I was alive 18 years ago, and I remember that nobody knew. If you had said that, that wasn't a thing. And so how was this person making a living at being a sexologist and psychotherapist for trans people when it wasn't a real thing 18 years ago? So I pulled the Google Trends, which only goes back to 2004, but that's enough time to cover 18 years. And there you see the trends. They pretty much didn't even exist until somewhere around like 2016, 2017. That's when the trans loonies started popping out. It's when people broke their mind under Donald Trump. Is that real? I don't know if that's really the marker. But man, we really gave up on reality sometime around the time that Donald Trump came down that escalator, which is interesting to me. It continues to be. The other thing is there's one of these like quotes that once you read it, you have to share it with someone else because it's so dumb. I don't want to be the only person who read it. And so I'm going to make you understand. There's a paragraph. They just talk about all these weirdo couples that have done weirdo things where the man decides to be a woman, the woman decides to be a man, or maybe they both swap and they're trying to decide, are they lesbians now? And they're all just weirdos. This one is good. There can be joy in coaching a new partner in their identity. Of course, it's that weird non-binary piece. And we're going to get to some non-binary stuff a little bit later on. Check out this name. Rhiannon Rippycock. You have to hear it. Rhiannon Rippycock, 45, lives in a small town in Iowa. Sophia Cock. Yeah, I don't know. And then recently transitioned into being a wife. So Sophia used to be a dude, but is actually still a dude. And now gets to go to Victoria's Secret and get a bra and goes to Sephora and gets makeup. It makes me want to puke. It really does. I just don't know why. It's not that people want to do weird stuff. People have always done weird stuff. It's that they want everybody else to hear about it. And I can't figure that out. I can't figure out how our society has gotten so soft. But it led me to this story, which I think is worth us covering because I said I was going to do it yesterday. Are you prepared for this? Look at this. The shooter who killed 5 at the Colorado LGBTQ plus club. This is coming from AP. Again, so-called hard news. And then we're going to go to ABC's version of it as well, which is also on the screen. Pleads guilty to 50 federal hate crimes. Now, what's really weird about the Club Q shooter who just got federal prosecution. By the way, he was already, or they, or whatever the heck they want to use, this dude Aldridge was already convicted in state charges. His name is Anderson Lee Aldridge and wants to use non-binary pronouns. Do you remember that? Because those of us who track this kind of thing and go like, look, there's some weird mental illness going on in this case. Whether this guy was doing it because it's obviously a fat dude. Is this guy doing it because he's trying to get better treatment in prison? Maybe. That's not dumb probably in this world. Or was he really messed up into this weird gender cult? And it turns out I don't actually care. Because what I care about is the news coverage ignores everything about how this guy required different pronouns. And so you had our DOJ. That's a federal prosecution, by the way, folks. Federal hate crimes, 50 of them. Federal hate crimes are going to be added on to the 55 life terms in prison plus another 190 years. And these admissions are really important to the United States Attorney's Office, the AUSA, a person called Allison Canati. said the admission that these were hate crimes is important to the government. Why? The government's only interest is justice, and more importantly, the government's only interest is making sure this person can't do it again. This person can't do it again. Period. He's got life without the possibility of parole, no death penalty. He's stuck in prison forever. So why does the federal government go after it? Because this is about something that is, quote unquote, important to the community of Club Q. That's not a real thing. There is no community of Club Q. This is a made-up idea that the federal government is getting behind gender ideology and pushing it on you because they have a vested interest. Now, you'll be shocked to learn that the U.S. district judge who heard this court was someone called Charlotte Sweeney. You'll also be shocked to learn that Charlotte Sweeney is the first openly gay federal judge in Colorado. How is that not a conflict of interest if we are worried about getting justice for a community that theoretically Charlotte Sweeney is a part of? That's when justice is no longer blind. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. And more importantly, there's some really disturbing quotes coming from this Charlotte Sweeney judge, which I would say is probably good enough to go after and try to get a mistrial. It took 14 or 15 paragraphs to get where the defense's case in the state said that Aldridge is non-binary and uses they, them pronouns. And the federal plea agreement that he signed also said that. But the state prosecutors said that was an effort to avoid responsibility for hate crimes. So let's get this straight. If you own an AR-15 and you're a gender weirdo, then you're not a real weirdo. You're not really part of the community because you're actually a bad person. And by the way, the reason why goes exactly to that thing that we heard on Liar Liar. I've made reference to this a couple times in national interviews now. It comes directly out of that Liar Liar scene. It's like, my objection is that you're totally going to destroy my case. Not that there's anything factually inaccurate about what's going on here. If you're going to have stupid and subjective versions of how gender works, like we just heard about in that ABC story, then you're going to get this insanity. Here's what the federal judge said. You went to this community's safe space and mass murdered people. Everything about that is politically charged garbage. Mass murdered people? It was 5 people that you shot and killed. Yes, every one of those individuals in America we care about as an individual. We theoretically have to say that each one of those is a person, not mass murdered. Like, you just made mass murdered a verb. And what in the hell is a community safe space? It was a strip mall-based gay club called Club Q. When this went off, do you remember the reaction immediately just disappeared because suddenly this Aldridge person decided to tell everybody, I'm also gender confused, like all these idiots, and I was just mad. And they were like, whoop, and the media withdrew from it. Now they're talking about it, but they've censored themselves. The judge says you went to a community safe space. The community is much stronger than you, stronger than your armor, stronger than your weapons, and sure as hell, stronger than your hatred. Yeah, that's an unbiased judge out there talking from the bench. You think this thing's not going to get overturned? In a fair world, it would. Not because this guy's not a dirtbag. Just because you can't have partisan judges from the bench, and we keep seeing them. It doesn't matter whether it's this Young Thub trial that if you guys watch Tracy Beans After Me, you heard that. These judges don't know what they're doing. They're going after reporters, and they're making political statements in the middle of their job. This is not what they are hired to do. It's really dangerous and stupid, which leads me to maybe why we are at this point. I'm going to talk about my friends over at Catholic Vote real quick. You guys can follow this. This comes from today's Loop. I'm going to just read you the top stories coming out of the Loop because they're great, and we're covering a lot of them. The Senate moves to register women for the draft. That's the story we're going to talk about in just a second here. Who's really running America? The Chevron case, a 40-year-old court case, is supercharged the federal bureaucracy. They're talking about that Chevron deference that we talked about yesterday. You guys should listen to that too. There's a Texas Attorney General by the name of Ken Paxton, who's doing a great job, is investigating the trans clinic. And by the way, that trans clinic also got the federal government to cover for them. And so they're going after the doctor. This is all the stories we've been talking about with Chris Rufo and Dr. Atam Hines. A lot of good stuff in today's Loop. I recommend it. It's full of solid information that's going to educate you. But nothing more dangerous and scary than this moment that we are at in American history. And this is a real thing. This is a real moment that we are at, is it not? Catholic Vote has gone on record saying that they oppose the Senate bill requiring women to register for the draft. Why on earth would women have to register for the draft? There's 2 pieces to this that are both really scary. Number one is because their recruiting numbers for the military are historically low. And if they are going to launch a war into Russia, or if we're going to launch something into China because of Taiwan, take your pick. If they're going to do this stuff, and they can't get enough red-blooded American males who come from working class backgrounds or have the idealism that maybe I had when I was 27 and leaves, even though you have a college degree, you sign up and enlist and you become an E3. If you don't have those people signing up to staff our military because you're doing weird gender stuff and you're celebrating people that have nothing to do with a warfighter effort and you're criticizing cops and military because they didn't do a good enough job of being nice when their job is actually potentially to go do violence when other people are dangerous, you're going to draft women like my daughters. And I won't have it. I won't be living in a country that does that. This is a very salient quote from my friend George Hill. I put it up on the screen because I saw this article because of him. George obviously gets the loop too. It says, no civilized nation sends its women to war. This is what, quote unquote, the end looks like. And that's correct. The minute that we abandon the idea, and we've already left a lot of these premises on the ground. Like, in fact, I'm pretty confident that that's what the AMRAD podcast was talking about today when they're talking about Republicans that are standing in favor of LGBTQIA rights stuff. They're doing it because it's politically expedient. There's nothing conservative about that idea. If you are interested in being a conservative, what are you conserving? It should be family values. And at the very minimum, the Western idea that women and children have intrinsic value because they represent the future. They have to be protected. The future is protected. That's why we care about education. That's why we look to something greater than ourselves. You don't send your women and children and your young daughters to war. That is the end. So Catholic votes signed on to a pair of letters opposing Democrat-controlled Senate, which would, they're putting forward this bill that would require some women to register for selective service. Every man who's over the age of 18 should know what I'm talking about right here. All right. Last Friday, the American Armed Service Committee, once again, passed a National Defense Authorization Act that would require women to register for the draft. Guys, this is how they sneak these things in these huge budgets. The NDAA is the budget for the military. There was one of those superhero sweating memes of someone having to push one of the two buttons, and it's like you're a feminist and you join the military to let people know that you're a feminist, but like, do you decide to get pregnant right before that deployment comes up because you can't deploy as a pregnant female and immediately postpartum? I'm for that, actually. Please do not deploy when you are pregnant. Please do not deploy if you are a woman that is like ready to bear children. It's far more important, and raising children is far more important than serving in our military, particularly now. That's why men are not doing it. They have left it behind. They have decided that the military is done with them and therefore they are done with the military. And you are going to see chronically low recruiting until they realize that it is not a social experiment and that's not where women belong in combat roles. I am 100% opposed to it. My buddies were part of the study that the Air Force did. I want to say they did this in like 2012, 2013, something like that. My friend is a stud. His wife is a stud. She's a CrossFit stud, like an MTG style, except not being obnoxious, and she's way prettier. And she's also way smarter than MTG. They actually met at CrossFit, as far as I remember, that classic sort of cult meeting, right? My buddy Nick is a physical specimen, has always been an absolute stud. And they volunteered to be part of this Air Force study. And yeah, it's the Air Force, but Special Operations Air Force are studs. And if you think otherwise, you've never met them. So he goes out there as a Special Operations TAC-P guy, and he signs up to do a series of multi-day physical evaluations to test stamina and speed and strength and so on. Because what they wanted to do is develop kind of a bell curve or a striation of how human beings fall. And they used enlisted men, enlisted women, and volunteers from the special operations community to go through and do these tests. And they were all kinds of stuff. It was dragging a tire with a rope. It was climbing up a rope. It was swimming with clothes on and a ruck. It was ruck marching. It was running. It was push-ups. It was sit-ups. It was pull-ups. It was all the physical calisthenics that were body weight, and then some of them that were based on percentage of body weight, but actual lifts. Okay? And when they did this, there were 3 distinct groups. You'll be shocked to learn there were 3 distinct groups of people that separated out. Special operators out here. Why? Because they've already gone through a significant amount. They are already weeded out, and they are the top of the top for physical capabilities, with very rare exceptions. And almost no overlap was another group that was just men who are enlisted. Across the board men. And behind that was women, with almost no overlap. There were some enlisted men that were weak, and they were down in the group with the women, and there were 1 or 2 women that excelled in certain categories and were able to keep up with the men on certain events. But across the board, when they weighted it for across all the different activities for broad-based physical capabilities for fighting wars, special operations, men, which are all men at that time, all men, then enlisted males, then females. We're in really bad shape if we are trying to draw from the bottom group to put them into a warfighting effort as a draft. That is a tacit admission that America has lost touch with its founding principles of values, and I hate it. I despise it. Catholic vote is 100% correct on opposing this. I hope you reach out to your elected representatives and let them know this is garbage. They can't vote for this stuff. Those of you who have daughters, those of you who have sisters, granddaughters maybe now, why? Can't do it. All right. Here's something that always steps out to me. We're always sort of led to believe, and this is something that I think is actually a broader principle when it comes to public. This is why I don't care much about foreign policy. It doesn't sound good. There's this big push right now, and we'll cover a tiny little bit of it. Apparently, Russia has gotten into league with North Korea, so they now signed some like multilateral trade agreement, and they've decided to do some defense and some arms and stuff like that. So they are friendly. That's not shocking to us. Like they're all in, if you're against America, then you might as well join up together. So you've got North Korea and Russia getting together. But one of the things that always blows my mind, and then, by the way, there's a South Korean reaction to it, and the South Koreans are like, we're going to help out the Ukrainians. And it's like, yeah, okay, whatever. I don't care as much about foreign policy because people in other countries do not think, outside of Western sort of liberal democracies, which we'll use broadly as a term, outside of Western values, people in the world do not think the same way about people in the world as Americans think about people in the world. What you're seeing on the screen right now is from CNN. Hundreds of pilgrims to Mecca in the Hajj die as temperatures hit 120 degrees Fahrenheit. That's just a matter-of-fact headline. They died of heat stroke. Hundreds. Hundreds have died. Thousands are being treated for heat stroke. 165 of them are Indonesian and dead. 41 are from Jordan. 35 from Tunisia. 11 Iranians. These numbers are horrific. That's 250 people died just from walking around in the heat for a religious pilgrimage to Mecca. This happens every year, people. I've been watching this for well over a decade. There's always hundreds of people who died in a trampling event. We haven't even gotten to that yet because I'm sure there will be one of those that happens almost every single year. There are always hundreds of people dying because they go for their religion to Mecca and walk around in a big circle. If you've never seen this, it's uncanny how little they care about human life because they just march around and stomp on each other to death. And that sounds really calloused. But there are cultures that do not value life the way that you do. And so thinking that there's a one-to-one relationship between the way that we think about people and other cultures do is why I don't care about other cultures as much. I've never been interested that much. It's so bizarre. It's such a strange thing. And it's so flippant that this headline says hundreds died. It's just matter of fact. Yeah, of course, that's what would happen. It was really hot. And so 250 people just succumbed to the heat. If that happened in America, there would be a catastrophe. When 20 people are killed because there are floodings across the entire Southwest or the entire Southeast, we lose our ever-loving minds. What is going to fix this? The levees broke. How do we fix it? Who's going to be held to blame? 250 people walked around in a circle and died from being overheated. And that's it. I don't get it. This fundamental sort of act like globalism is a real possibility. We can't be globalists and also be Americans and care about Western values because the world doesn't have Western values. And that's probably the thing that we've learned, at least in my lifetime, watching American foreign policy, is we keep trying to export American values on people that don't have them. And they're like, we don't get it. So we're not going to act this way. It's bizarre. And that leads me to the immigration crisis that we have right now, which is not immigration. It's illegal immigrants. It's illegal aliens sneaking into our country. When you bring people that don't have the same values that we have, that you have, that I have, they're going to do things that don't make any bit of sense to you. And yeah, that's something that seems like the Democrats are totally okay with. Here's what I'm not okay with. It's going to result in a breakdown of that thing that we all want to do, which is outsource violence to the government to do things that are just, so that revenge is not the way we work. All of us have that instinct for revenge, myself included, maybe more than you. But the way that America is able to be America and be the shining light is that we don't have judges talking about safe spaces and openly political garbage. We're supposed to have something that is disinterested, that just says, look, balls and strikes, you broke the law. Here's how much you broke it. These are the instances. This is how we can prove it. Here's a jury of peers. They also agree. Now you're going to get the sentencing. Nobody's emotionally involved in this. That's how you take revenge out of the game and you make it so-called justice. But we've been cheapening it over and over again with racial justice and environmental justice, right? All these modifiers to justice. Ben Shapiro, one of the great things he says is that when you have to put a modifier in front of a concept, you weaken that concept. And that is definitely true about justice. So that's how you end up with this. I want you to listen to the real crazy thing here. Think about what it says about our society at the end, because the people who caught this guy were not the police. And that represents a massive swing back. When people talk about this country going badly, and I tell you that I think it's going to get what I'm calling Western, it's getting Western in New York right now.
Christian Inga was arraigned today in New York City on charges of sexually assaulting a 13-year-old girl after school last week in a shocking daylight attack. Police say the 25-year-old migrant from Ecuador approached two teens in the park at knife point. According to the criminal complaint, the suspect tied the boy and girl to one another, gagged them, then raped the girl before fleeing the scene. Police put out the sketch of the suspect and later this video of him riding a bike. Outraged New Yorkers responded.
We waited for him all day.
A community of Good Samaritans recognized the suspect as someone who lived in the neighborhood and waited for him for hours at a grocery store where he was last seen.
I seen him walking into the store and I had to take him out.
The chaotic scene playing out live on the Citizen app.
He tried to fight back though. He tried to run for his life. Like he really tried to run for his life, but he couldn't.
Police say Inga entered the U.S. illegally through Eagle Pass, Texas, back in 2021 with his then 3-year-old son.
You catch all that? He came in illegally under the Biden administration from Eagle Pass, which we hear about all the time. And those New Yorkers had to take it into their own hands. And it played out live on the Citizenship app. And you're like, yeah, that's what we want to see. Communities step up. No, that is the wrong answer, because that means that the American experience is dead, just as bad as sending our daughters to war. If we can't, and we don't have it right now, we got to claw our way back to it the same way we got to claw our way back to the Second Amendment rights that we've been losing. Those rights are American God-given rights, right? They are given by God, then we in America protect them with a Second Amendment that's supposed to keep the government away. It's not supposed to define what your right is. It just says the government can't touch them. We lost that. We're losing our sense of what justice looks like. Why? Because we are bringing people that don't have our values and culture into this nation, and we are excusing it. And they're excusing it in this gaslighting garbage of the mainstream media. I'm going to share a couple of little examples of this, but this is the follow-up clip that I think is most salient. Remember, it doesn't matter that you're an American and American laws and American taxes are supposed to protect what you think is important. No. We're just going to make sure that these communities of people that come here illegally are supposed to be accommodated. And that's why Joe Biden's so great. This is a very clear situation. You guys know that I'm not a big cheerleader for Donald Trump, but the alternative is so atrocious. And it's so antithetical to American experience for the first 250 years or so as we've gotten here. It makes no sense to me. Listen to this lady making this argument.
They can remain together as a whole family here in this country as a result of this executive order. Those are the things that matter most. And those are the ways in which President Biden continues to fight for, communities across this country that, really deserve the opportunity that we know is so important in this election.
These are the things that matter the most. You probably have to back that up with some actual facts, because I don't know how that matters the most. And then what is he fighting for? Communities that don't actually belong in the United States. What are they talking about? Their amnesty of up to 500,000 people. They're going to incentivize more illegal immigration by giving amnesty to people that aren't here legally. And they're going to do so because that's what matters the most. They're telling you what it is. The media will tell you exactly what they think the values are. And there's nothing about them deserving that pops up as we're seeing pop in the chat here. There's nothing about deserving. You don't deserve anything from a nation you're not a part of just because you snuck in. You guys just saw. If that's the chat right there. If you are not joining us on Rumble, that's what you're missing out on. Make sure you're liking these videos as you guys are sitting there watching. If you have not already clicked it, find a way to do it. I'd appreciate it if you would. I want to keep going because there's more of this. Look, the best for me is the wild gaslight. There's a whole story about that. I was going to talk to you guys about cheap fakes. It's getting an indefensible boost. What the media does is, this is the Republicans' pounce game. This is even dumber. What they've said is, we created a fake term, which I debunked yesterday by looking on Google Trends. It's never been a term until a band called cheap fake popped up. And so cheap fake can be found that way. But cheap fakes is a new creation that we think Karine Jean-Pierre, Sideshow Bob, the White House spokesperson, got up and said, and then the media runs with it because they've gotten their orders. And they're going to talk about how anybody who's showing unedited clips of this garbage guy walking around, doddering old fool, as the British said and made fun of, this goofy person running the country, allegedly. They're cheap fakes if you say how he actually acts. Like, I don't get it. I don't understand. But this is my favorite. This is probably the most fun pre-bunking that you guys are going to find. Why do presidents often struggle in their first re-election debate, and how Biden is going to get ready? How he's getting ready, shocker, guys. He went to the beach, and now he's going to go to Camp David. He's basically getting ready for his debate by not doing his job. But what an incredible statement coming from NBC News under their decision, their election banner, Decision 2024. Do presidents often struggle in these election debates? And so they talk about being a commander-in-chief is a protected bubble, and it's 4 years of people calling you Mr. President, and that's why they're not ready for the debate. It's actually a shock when someone confronts them. People have been confronting Joe Biden about being a liar and being a fraud for basically his whole career, have they not? And I pulled this little thing from 1987. I think this is a great little clip. Some of you guys have forgotten it. There's no reason that we should memory hold this kind of stuff. Joe Biden has been, let's say, disconnected from the truth and comfortable with saying things that were completely false, that he had to know were completely false from the beginning. It's why he was never able to run for president until he was installed in 2020. So this is what he sounds like when he's lying, and he doesn't have his brain addled by being 81 years old or whatever's wrong with him right now. Here we go.
To law school on a full academic scholarship, the only one in my class to have a full academic scholarship. Went back to law school and in fact ended up in the top half of my class. I was the outstanding student in the political science department at the end of my year. I graduated with 3 degrees from undergraduate school and 165 credits, only needed 123 credits.
Biden now concedes he did not graduate in the top half of his law school class, that he does not have 3 degrees from college, and that he was not named outstanding political science student in college.
Newsweek says Biden actually went to school on a half scholarship, ended up near the bottom of his class, and won only 1 degree, not 3.
Joe Biden ranked 76th in a class of 85 at the University of Syracuse Law School. I mean, this guy comes off this whole thing as a flyweight.
Now Biden says Newsweek is right. His memory had failed him.
Yeah, his memory had failed him. That's what happened. He wasn't just lying. It's just his memory had failed him. You know, he's like an older man who's kindly and has a poor and failing memory. That's why he can't be prosecuted by the special counsel's office. Apparently he's okay to run for president, though. Very weird. So they go out and they talk about how Ronald Reagan also struggled in his first debate and Jimmy Carter does. It's totally normal for people to get out there and struggle because people have been sort of really nice to them for a long time. And now they're going to be dealing with something kind of difficult and personally combative. And so, you know, don't let this dissuade you, Biden voters. Lots of people suck at their first debate when they are running for re-election in the office of president. And as you guys said, his memory didn't fail him. He's a liar. Yeah, we know he's a liar. Of course he's a liar. But the incredible thing is that this gaslighting has been going on for quite a while when it comes to the media montages that you can find. And I found a good one for you talking about how, look, Joe Biden was clearly and fluently lying in that clip I just showed you from 1987. But that was not Biden's best. Today's Biden is Biden's best. Here is a list of morons from the leftist talking points going to let you know, don't believe your lying eyes. He's actually the best he's ever been. That's what 81 years old is he 80 or 81? Someone fact check me in the chat. That's what it means when you're completely falling apart, freezing on the screen. There were these debunking claims, by the way, saying that his freezing, the cheap fakes, him freezing on the screen that we showed you the other day, that was what normal people do when there's an applause break. I've been in front of crowds, not a lot, but I've been in front of crowds. And so have you seen people in front of crowds. And you know what happens when people applaud. It's kind of awkward because you're just waiting there. You're just standing. So do you do something really unnatural, like just freeze, like Beavis and Butthead style? Do you go Cornholio on them? Or do you wave? Do you thank them? Do you give them the hands? You know, do you point at somebody so much? Thanks so much. Yeah, you know, oh, there it is. You touch your heart. Normal people react to applause, which is appreciation, in normal ways. They don't just stand still like they're crapping their pants like my toddler or my infant does. My infant gets really still when she has to poop. Maybe that's what he's doing. Really bizarre. Anyway, this is the best Joe Biden that's ever been. And if you don't believe it, then you are the real problem. Start your tape.
Start your tape right now, because I'm about to tell you the truth. And F you if you can't handle the truth. This version of Biden is the best Biden ever.
She knows so long as she was 9.
In fact, I think he's better than he's ever been.
President Biden has a photographic memory. His understanding and mastery of a complicated geopolitical situation is remarkable.
He is sharp, intensely probing, and detail-oriented and focused.
Jackie, are you here? Where's Jackie? I didn't think she was going to be here.
I was sitting, 2 feet from him across the table, and he was, intense.
Have trouble walking sometimes? Yeah, so did FDR. He wanted GD war.
But he's totally focused. He's very sharp. They say he's sharp in meetings and so on.
Very lucid, very well informed. Biden is stately, and he comes with gravitas. There hasn't been, as far as I know, a single claim that Biden made a mistake.
Ageism is an issue. Americans have a rich history of holding people's physical characteristics against them. Okay, you can ask African Americans.
He's older. That doesn't mean that he is unfit, and there's a lot of ageism there.
Now, this age attack, this obsession by the right, Joe Biden may not be able to speak for himself the way that he used to.
They want to think to take on government if we get out of line, which they're talking again about, and that's him lying around.
I think people should be speaking up for Joe Biden.
Americans and reporters in the media are just judging him by a physical appearance, and it's horribly unfair. Age is an asset.
He showed exactly how with it he is.
The flip side of this coin is that he has a tremendous amount of wisdom and experience.
He's got so much wisdom and experience that we now have MSNBC telling you that Fox News is helping Trump plan the next January 6th style assault on democracy because they are terrified that this idiot is who's representing them. One of the things you keep hearing from other pundits, I'm sure, is that they're going to replace him at the last minute. The very interesting point that was brought up, and I scroll a lot of social media from people that have, they have more experience in the political realm, the mechanics of political machinations than I do. And this seems to be probably the biggest argument against that. Joe Biden's been raising millions and millions of dollars to run for president. A lot of this money is going directly into PACs that are associated with him, or they're going into his actual reelection campaign. They can't just write that money over for somebody else. Those monies were given and they are governed by federal law. Yeah, they could break the law, of course, but they're creating new problems for themselves. I think they're sticking with this guy. It doesn't make any sense that they would be able to, we're too close. You're going to have him get into a debate and then change his mind. I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't even last the first couple weeks of the term, because you can't get Kamala Harris elected. But the real problem is money. The money is being raised for a specific purpose, and it's not generic, and it is tied in to Joe Biden's name, and therefore it has to go to a Joe Biden campaign. And I don't think they can turn around and take all that money and then just give it to another campaign. They'll have to go through some machinations on there. They'd have to start from scratch with raising money. And even if they got someone with a lot of brand awareness, it would be a real problem. So I think they're stuck with this guy. I don't think they're psyched about it. I think he's deteriorated at a level that nobody expected. Hence, you get those sort of montages of insanity and that age equals wisdom. Okay, man, if that's what you want to go with, and that's how you know that this insanity is going even deeper. This is a opinion piece that was written on MSNBC by someone from Media Matters, so you know it's real. And they said, quote, the guy says, quote, I think it's Matt Myers. I'll have to double check his name. He says, fear-mongering about the potential for election-changing fraud has been a consistent refrain this year on Fox News. Forget Fox News. Everybody else is talking about it too. Ingram says the Democrats are going to stop at nothing, and if they can, they're going to change the game, or maybe even cheat. Yeah, of course. That's 100% the case. As we've been talking about here, there's a real possibility that we don't see anything resembling an American election happening in November. You're foolish if you think otherwise. I know a lot of folks are talking about it, but people that work in the national security realm are hearing it too. We don't know what it's going to look like. but anything that can change the status quo where they can bump the rules in their favor. And then the biggest tip-off is sort of one-sided prosecution, one-sided focuses, just like that judge that we heard in Colorado. The DOJ is also weighed in on this. I'm going to tell a story that's, we're going to cover a story in just 1 second, but I want you previously to remember, DOJ has said they are not interested in election fraud. The election fraud task forces, the election crimes task forces are not going to focus on fraud specifically. They're only interested in keeping people from the ballot box. So if you do something that does what they call voter suppression, it will be investigated at a federal level. The DOJ's priorities are not what you think they would be to secure election. They are to make sure that people can vote. They want a broader constituency going out and having access to the franchise, which by itself is not bad. But if people are defrauding the rest of those, if our votes are getting canceled out on a one-to-one basis by people that have no right to vote, or that people are seeding fake votes in, then we are talking about a serious, serious threat. And DOJ is not interested in that threat. You need to know that. Second is this. Jim Banks, this is coming out of Red State, which is a good little website if you guys don't follow over there. Jennifer Oliver O'Connell, to give credit to her for covering the story. Jim Banks wants to know why Merrick Garland refuses to prosecute death threats against his family. Doesn't that seem like a real problem? And we saw a Washington Post editorial allegedly written by Merrick Garland saying, quote, the Justice Department makes decisions about criminal investigations based only on the facts and the law, and it does not investigate people because of their last name and their political affiliation, or the size of the bank account, or where they come from, or what they look like. We investigate and prosecute violations of federal law, nothing more, nothing less. Garland wrote, those are all lies. Those are false. Those are obviously true. Those are obviously true at a different time in history, but certainly not today. How do we know that? Look at the FACE Act. It's stacked 120 plus to under 5. They don't prosecute people for going after churches. They don't prosecute people for threatening to kill a congressman from Indiana and his daughters and his wife. They threaten to prosecute people who sit in front of abortion clinics and pray, people who defend their children like Mark Hout. They go after Republicans. They have investigations into George Santos, who George is a weird guy. I guess he just opened an OnlyFans page. By the way, something about this, we need to start normalizing not calling people in elected political offices by their titles, I think. They've gotten too comfortable. When people come in and they're sycophantic about weirdos, and George Santos is a weirdo, I think he would agree with that. He does weird stuff. And people are like, oh, Congressman, let me ask you a question. Hey, George, you owe me money. How about that? I told you guys a long time ago, I made a bet with George and he couldn't take it, but still, they're people. They're supposed to work for us. They need to remember that. And our government is supposed to work for us too. And it's supposed to go after and say, like, look, if you threaten a public official using interstate communications and you leave threatening voicemails saying that you're going to kill somebody's wife and daughters, hey, if Jim Banks needs a hand, they apparently convicted this person. There was enough evidence to get this person in state court and the federal government opted out. Do you know how obvious the malfeasance is when the United States attorney in the Northern District of Indiana turned it down, but Allen County, the DA there, picked this case up and went after and prosecuted for felony and misdemeanor charges and got a guilty plea out of this dude who did it. We're upside down right now. This is one of those times federal officials being threatened should be prosecuted federally. That's the only way that this works. Otherwise, you end up with that thing in New York. You end up with people showing up and doing it for themselves. You're going to see people that are friends of Jim Banks taking that guy out behind the woodshed. That's what they're working towards, and that is a complete destruction of America on every level. I want to bring something to your attention that I didn't know, but it's another reason why you should homeschool your kids. If you guys don't know about this kind of stuff, this is of value to you, I think. 14-year-old AI cyber exploitation victim. I didn't even know what that was. I want you to be aware of it. Coming from Fox News, speaks out about mortifying experiences on social media. Folks, there are a lot of downstream effects of putting your kids out in the public. I know many of you say it's only Facebook. I'm just sharing it with friends and family. I just want people to be able to share my photo albums. You probably should stop. Some of you are it's going to be too late. But this is one of those threats that's showing up right now, and it's a real problem. And I can only imagine, and I feel my heart goes out to this 14-year-old girl. What happened was someone took an innocuous picture of her, used AI to take her face, and then turned it into a nude photograph. That was not real. It was created. And then suddenly it goes around her school. Fake nude images on Snapchat and Instagram or whatever else is going out there, shared around from all of her peers. Horrifying. How do you fix that? You fix that by never having that photo in public. I am incredibly aggressive about not showing my kids' faces. You won't see them on social media. I'll blur them out. They're always from the back. You're not going to see who my kids are, what they look like. I don't share photographs on any social site. I have no interest in presenting my life to the public, and you need to be careful with your kids and your grandchildren. This is a real thing. This is a real problem. This leads to things like suicide and hopelessness, because that is a big, big destruction of that sense of safety that this 14-year-old girl is going to feel. She didn't even do anything wrong. She's not even sending photos to folks, but they're created through AI programs, which is not hard to do, and we can see them. It starts with a picture of their face. So think about what you're putting out there for your kids. Think about, I knew people that would register email addresses for their kids the minute they were born. It's like, maybe that's not terrible. But you want to start putting pictures of them from the minute that they're born online, and their entire life is being tracked. We're seeing that right now. There are kids in the public whose life has been documented since they were peeing in the air in diapers. It's a real tough burden to grow up with. And I don't know if people just thought it was too cute and never thought about the consequences downrange. This is one of them. You should be thinking about this stuff. You need to be aware of what you're doing, because those have effects when these kids cannot make those decisions. You're making those decisions as parents. So when their life is online, it's a big deal. When their life is not online at all, they don't even know. And that's not going to happen. Just be real cautious. These are people that you love. Think about what you're subjecting them to, what the risk looks like. And this thing is stupid. And kids are dumb, man. Kids are awful, right? They have these tools. They also don't understand that these will probably haunt this girl forever. They'll always be out there because it's on the internet. Pretty bad. Don't do that. All right. As I said, I wanted to cover real quickly. South Korea is now going to say, because North Korea and Russia have a strategic pact, they're going to give money and weapons to Ukraine. The big story that I saw on a bunch of these news sites that I wasn't particularly interested in, but apparently the Russians are using old Soviet era weapon systems. They are attaching like a device on there to allow them to be what they call glide bombs, essentially a JDAM, if you're familiar with that sort of thing. But it's a dumb munition that has a smart pack on it that can help glide them to a GPS coordinate, and is being devastating on the Ukrainian front. Anything that's in striking range of these bombers that are coming, and there's hundreds of air bases that they can launch from the Russian side, and they're throwing a lot of dumb munitions that they've stepped up, and the cost is somewhere between 20,000 is what they estimated in these articles that I'm reading, but in the US, a JDAM goes for like 30 to 60 grand to be able to outfit one of our bombs, to be able to be dumb munition to smart munition. That's kind of what we're talking about. $20,000, $30,000 is actually very low for munitions, and they're getting a lot more strategic effect. So the Ukraine's getting hammered right now. And you don't hear a lot of it. This is one of the rare articles that I saw that was covering that. And it was across all the streams. They all kind of had something about how smart bombs from the Russian end are causing this. Just be aware. Like I said, I don't care about other people that have different values, but it's out there and it's in the world. And it means something that other human beings are being hurt and other human beings are dying in a way that we're ignoring and we're funding. So that's where your tax dollars are going. We're not even living by our own values in our country, and then we're trying to export it to other places here. So. All right, I got a palate cleanser for you, which is kind of funny as we go into coming up to Friday. I'm going to start with a 5-star review here because I do really appreciate all of you guys and the things that you write. This one is coming from WVK Luther, another one from the Blitz of May 21st. By the way, we are seeing Apple Podcasts take down our reviews in real time. We're taking photos and it's showing the numbers going up and going back down. Let's overwhelm them again if you guys are able. If you're listening, even if you've given us a 5-star review before, I'd appreciate even a short one. That'd be great. This is kind of a longer one. It says, listen daily, 5 stars. I respect the bravery that you show and telling the truth, even when it hurts you personally. You and your family are in my prayers, and I'm thankful to hear your take on the evil coming down on this nation. If the Lord does not judge this nation, he certainly does owe an apology to Sodom and Gomorrah. Man, that's one of my favorite lines that I've thrown out there in the world. But I think it's true. I think we're about to owe an apology to Sodom and Gomorrah, or we're about to face some biblical consequences. Repentance from our nation's leaders is necessary, and I hope Donald Trump gets this message too. I hope all of them do, that humility comes back out. It's a big deal. We should be humble as folks that live under Christian values, which is what we do, whether you like it or not. That's where your values come from as an American. It's a big deal. And man, Sodom and Gomorrah, what a scary idea. That's why the boys always talk about the sweet meteor of death. That's what we're kind of voting for in Washington, D.C. All right, I got something funny for you. As you get older, you like listening to punk rock when you're a kid. My childhood was different than some of yours, but you listen to like the music of rebellion. This is what would happen if you were listening to the music of rebellion today. It's kind of funny, talking about heart disease. This is if punk pop was modernized for the people that listened to it back in the 80s and 90s. This is what it would sound like. So you guys will get a kick out of this.
You want to go to the gym today, but you know you have to. Because your family has a history of heart conditions. You're gonna feel better by
There it is. So that's Pop Punk telling you that your life is tough when you become an adult. You got things you got to do, but you don't want to do it, and you plan too much, and your weekend's over. I think we all kind of know that there's not enough time in the day. So anyway, make your time count. Go out there and do things of value today. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Make sure you've shared it if you can. Make sure you've liked it and you're subscribed to the channel. We got a bunch of you that are subscribing over on Rumble. Really appreciate when you guys do that. And you'll see those are the red highlighted names in the live chat going on right there. $5 a month. Nothing goes further than that. And it keeps us involved in the current lawsuit that we are doing against the FBI, trying to get you guys something very interesting. And I'm struggling to get it. If you look on social media, especially Twitter, you'll see that I posted that video and what we're getting from our FOIA request. Anyway, you guys support it by doing stuff like that. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you again tomorrow for Friendly Friday with my buddy Steve Friend, God willing. And God bless you. And we'll see you then in the morning.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.